Hi guys, and welcome to an unboxing and review of the Zhiyun Z1 Evolution 3-axis handheld gimbal. Now, anyone who's watched some of my videos before will know that I'm quite clued up on gimbals. I've dealt with quite a few of them. I know the Fairtech products inside out, really, and also, you know, the DJI products, you know, the way these things work, and I've had my hands on quite a few of them. Now, these guys actually emailed me the other day. They'd seen some of my Fairtech products, and they said, you know, we'd like to send you something to do a test review of. I said, you know, send me what you've got. So very kindly, they pretty much immediately sent me the Evolution. They've also sent me the Rider 2, and they've also sent me the Z1 Tiny 2 as well, which is their flight gimbal. So coming up over the course of the next month or so, it's going to be a bunch of these videos, including all of these with a bit of a review on them. But this one we're just concentrating on the handheld gimbal. So let's just quickly whisk it out of the box. So we've got a nice solid bit of cardboard packaging, no frills, but very sort of classy, I would say. And we'll just take that out of there. And basically, as you can see, it comes in sort of a modular design. So there's a little pod there. That's where the main gimbal is. So let's just take a look at what we get in the little pod. So we get a battery. This is a 3.7 volt battery, 2000 milliamp hours, 7.4 working hours, and that is actually a Zhiyun one, but you can get replacements from other places. There's a little extension, aluminium knurled extension, which is important, and we'll look at that in a moment. We then get micro USB cable, quite a nice quality one, it has to be said, and we also get a battery charger, so a twin battery charger which works via micro USB. We then get a couple of USB micro cables, and again I'll talk about these later, but these actually plug into your GoPro, and then we get some extra little brass tightening nuts, and again there's more information on that as well. So now let's just whisk this out of the box. So this is the main product itself. So this is what it looks like as it comes out of the box. Nice construction, very nice aluminium, all very sturdy, very similar to the Fairtech G4 in kind of design in many respects, from the point of view of the actual physical feel of it. Nice knurled aluminium grips here. Interestingly, as it comes out of the box, it looks as if it's got the base on it already, and it does, but you have to add the extension to make it work. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew this, and I'm just going to show that to you. Unlike the Fairtech G4, this is not a switch, this is actually a 1/4 inch thread, so you can actually use that on a tripod or on a monopod. So if you wanted to extend this, you'd be able to do that, or obviously if you wanted to fix it to something you know, that has a tripod mount on it, no problem at all. So very nice little option there. So what we have to do to get it going, there's already one battery inside there, which is removable, just so you can see. So one battery there, we add the extension, we throw the second battery in there, we then put the end cap on, nice and tight, and then of course we've also got to mount our camera. So I am going to be using the GoPro Hero 4 Silver, which has the screen on the back of it. So all I need to do is just slide that into the cage, make sure it's nice and straight, and then tighten the nuts. And it really is as simple as that to get your camera on there. Now, one thing I will mention is that the extra little screws that you've got here, that actually allows you to fit the backpack to a GoPro. But likewise, this isn't specifically designed just for the GoPro camera. You can actually use anything that uses a GoPro form factor. You know, obviously dimensions and things like that will be important to it, but it can cope weight-wise. The motors are designed to cope with cameras that have slight variations, and in fact you can see as I'm holding this on here without anything going, if I just leave it and let it drop out of the box, the silver is actually not balanced for it. Now that would normally be something that would make me think, well, hang on, is this going to work very well, because an out of balance gimbal is not necessarily what you want. But the idea is that this is quite universal, and they're using quite tough motors, again similar in what Fairtech do with theirs. So anyway, so let's now just have a quick power up and take a look at what it does. Okay, so to do a power on this, you've got a couple of buttons on the side here. You've actually got your on and off button, is that little brass coloured button there. You've then got a nice little LED, which is an indicator for the mode you're in, the battery status, things like that. And what's very different on this one is that you've actually got this rather lovely little kind of PlayStation 4 style joypad, very small one, which gives you a full range of motion. And obviously I'll get into what that actually gives you the ability to do. We've got micro USB for updating firmware, and I believe a remote is probably coming for this, if not already available as well, which will plug into that. And then underneath that you've got this little rubber doodad here, which if I pull that out, now this is actually a 3.5mm jack socket for an AV cable, and what that allows you to actually do using these little micro USB cables here is you can actually plug them into this little socket here underneath the camera. You then plug them into the GoPro, and then you've got a choice. You've either got one that's got 3 cables on it, which will just send the video link through that to this jack socket, and then obviously you can plug in an external monitor that uses an AV input via a mini jack socket to actually monitor the output, which is a nice little feature. Or you can use the one that's got 4 cables, which if you're using a GoPro will actually charge your camera using the batteries internally in the gimbal. Obviously it's going to shorten the life of the gimbal, but they're stating that this should go for a good 6 hours plugged in anyway, and so if you've got your GoPro on there it's going to reduce that time, but I mean 6 hours is a lot of time, and you can also buy a couple of spare batteries. You've got 12 hours of footage on there, which is going to far exceed anything that the GoPro is capable of from a single battery. So a nice little touch there basically, that you can actually mount an external monitor. So from a point of view of 3D design I might have to do some little rigs that will allow you to mount you know, an external monitor to it, but out of the box that's your controls. So to turn it on, we simply press this button here on the side, the on off button, and you can see we'll get a single flash and it's flashing. Now you can see now everything is still dead, which confuses a few people. All you have to do to actually initialize is push the little joystick in once for a couple of seconds, and boom, you can see the gimbal springs to life. And if I rotate round, you can see that it is now stabilizing the camera as expected. Now nothing particularly different in regards to the way that it actually works in that sense. You know, it holds the horizon, that's the idea of it in this particular mode, so no matter what you do here it will hold that horizon. Obviously if you're walking along, one thing that people do forget is that you're always going to get that up and down motion, the bounce. You can compensate that out by holding it a little bit like this to try and sort of compensate that bounciness, but gimbals like this, a 3-axis gimbal, is never going to get that up and down, so it's never going to be the smoothest of the smooth, but that's the whole point of it. And obviously we'll see in the test footage later on in this video how this performs. Things that I'm going to be looking for are the horizon. Is it keeping a nice level horizon? Is it going to do roll drift? If I spin around quickly, is that horizon going to slip? And at the moment I can see that there isn't much movement in that horizon, which is a nice feature. And we're also going to of course take a look at the various modes. Now in this mode that I've got, which is kind of the default mode, as you can see, if I lean forward the camera stays on that horizon. So let's say I come up to a bridge and I want to look under it, I want to be able to pan down. All I have to do is double tap the joystick, and now if I lean down, the camera follows my motion and follows the downwards motion in a nice sort of smooth motion. If I single tap again, then we go back into that main mode where the camera won't do it. Now that's all lovely, but also in mode number 1, let's say I wanted to pan down. Okay, all I need to do is I need to just push down on the little joypad, and you can see the camera will tilt down, push up on the joypad, and the camera will push up. Very nice. Now if I go left and right in this particular mode, nothing's happening. So all you need to do when you're in mode 1, you just tap again, single tap, and now you've got control of not only the pitch, as you can see, up and down is still there, but without moving my hand at all, if I press left, I can now rotate the camera left, and likewise I can do it right, and you can see the full range of motion here is actually, I think it's about 320 degrees. So that was at its extent there, and then if I keep my hand on the left hand joystick, it will come all the way around, stop probably about there. Yeah, so it's nearly a full range of motion there, which is really nice. So that's in the single tap mode. So there's two modes there. So if I just tap once more again, it will centralize the gimbal, and then we're back in the mode. Now if I double tap again, so we're now in that follow mode where it will follow down. But what's nice about this is that this can actually be used for a bit of calibration, because you can set it on a table, so you've got nice and flat there. But if I just rotate it around here, if I now push left and right on the joypad, you can see that the horizon is now changing. So what you can actually do is you can line this up, because if I now single tap to get out of this mode, it remembers that horizon. So if I now rotate around, it's remembering that that is where I wanted my horizon to be. So what's nice about that is that if I double tap again, I can actually adjust my horizon on the camera without using any software or anything like that, get it nice and straight, get it all lined up. It's about there, single tap, and it will remember that. So so really nice. So if you've got a wonky horizon, there are some calibrations that you can do which are a little bit long-winded and convoluted, but that's just a nice way of kind of recalibrating your horizon to a nice level playing field. And that's your basics of it. Now there may be a couple of other modes that I'm missing out at this point in time. I'm going to get outside, we're going to do some test footage, I'm going to do a bit of walking, a bit of cycling. I'm not going to be going skiing unfortunately, or water sports or anything like that. You know, just general basic testing, which is what majority of people are going to do for it. And we'll just see how it compares to some of the Phaotech stuff that I've done and how it holds the horizon. But that's all it's going to be for the moment, so we'll have a look at that footage and then we'll go from there. So we get on to the testing. You'll see in the top left hand corner we have the output from a session camera, which is just pointing at the gimbal, and it's trying to give you an idea of how bumpy the road is, the kind of surface that you would expect if you just had the camera without stabilization. You can also see how I'm holding it, how much movement my arm is doing, and you can kind of tell from that how much compensation the gimbal is doing. Now when I set out on this originally, what was interesting was the horizon was ever so slightly too high on the left, and indeed if we look at this shot right here, it still is ever so slightly. Now it seems to level itself out over a short period of time, and now as I'm riding along I would say that's how I wanted it. Now there is the option of course to go into mode 2 and compensate manually. It may be a calibration problem, but once we've got going, once we've got under steam, it's obviously managed to find where it needs to be, and it's staying fairly locked in, even when I've got the camera in a parallel mode, which is very interesting because in the next shot that you'll see when I do the walking test, you'll see that actually that is potentially something that can trip it out a little bit. But at the moment my gimbal is parallel to the road. You see I'll move it up now, it's got a slight angle, but ultimately look at that horizon. That horizon is now locked in, and that is exactly what you want out of one of these handheld gimbals. That is the thing that gives you that stable feeling where you can move it around all over the place, but the edges of those horizons will stay completely fixed in place no matter what you do. So if you pan to the left, if you pan to the right, you're looking to see whether or not that horizon drops, and as you can see there, I pan to the left, no drop whatsoever, it stays completely rigid. That is a sign of a really good IMU, a good setup, well calibrated gimbal. So I would say certainly from my point of view, using a bike like this where you get a nice smooth gliding sensation, there's no up and down motion because you're on a bike, this is really impressive footage, and you know, it really makes a difference over a normal GoPro. Now we move on to the handheld shot. Again, I'm using the two cameras. Now, very crucial here, look at the horizon on the main image now. Completely off. Left hand side's way too high, right hand side's way too low. I'd done nothing to this, I just powered it on. Maybe I'd moved it around too much when I powered it on, but what I do here, as you've just seen, I go into double tap mode. That means I can adjust the horizon manually, single press again, and it's come back out. Now what's very interesting is that as I'm walking along now, what I'm doing is I'm trying to compensate out the bounce by holding it parallel to the road. You're going to see here, top left hand corner, I'm now parallel to the road, so the handle is parallel to the road. As I'm holding it like this, notice the horizon is wandering again. It's now dropping too low on the left and it's too high on the right. So as we look at this shot here, you can see, and it's actually moving ever so slightly. So whether or not there's something with a calibration problem there that's the issue, not entirely sure, but it doesn't seem to be leveling out now. It seems to actually getting worse, all the way to the point where I can physically see it on the camera. But the advantage, of course, when I notice this is I can stop as I do now, double tap, play around with the joystick, overcompensate a little bit, there you go, single tap and get it back working. But a little concern, that is something that obviously if you're setting up a shot, you don't want to be looking at the camera, you don't want to be thinking, oh, is it still straight, is it still straight, you want it locked in. What's very interesting is that now I've turned around, I'm now holding the gimbal in its normal kind of perpendicular mode, so in other words the handle is no longer parallel to the ground, and as we go into this mode you can see again those horizon edges really locked in, exactly what we want. There's more bounce, you notice an up and down motion, and that's because we are walking, and unfortunately no matter what stabilization you've got, if it's a 3-axis gimbal, you're always going to get a bit of bounce when you're walking because you can't really compensate it out very easily, and the manufacturers haven't as yet found a kind of a 4th axis method. Now what's quite interesting here is you'll notice in top left I've now gone back to being in the parallel mode. Now the horizon just ever so slightly drifts up on the left hand side, not massively but enough to be noticeable, certainly to me. However, as I'm walking along it doesn't seem to get any worse, it doesn't get worse like it did earlier. So again, it's something that you just maybe need to keep an eye out on if you are holding it in that parallel version. You just need to make sure that horizon stays. But now as we look at it, perfectly reasonable. So it seems to have compensated itself out. It's something I'm going to report back to Zhiyun. I want to make sure that they know about it, just in case a firmware update would be able to tweak it out. But overall, in its normal mode, absolutely fine. Final shot, you can see here, what I've done is I've put it in its inverted mode, and that means that I've used the Hero 4's automatic orientation mode. I've then double tapped into mode 2, I've leaned it all the way down forward, and now I'm basically holding the gimbal upside down. What this allows you to do is to get a nice low slung dynamic shot. You can get a bit of an interesting view from it. In a moment you'll see as I pan around here, you get a nice little view of me walking, get the old white chicken legs out, strolling along, something a little bit more dynamic. And of course with the fact that you've got a 1/4 inch thread on the bottom of this gimbal, you could add an extension to it. I could, for example, have used my little jobby tripod, screwed it to the bottom of it, and I'd have that extra long grip to really sort of drag it along the floor and give you a much more dynamic shot from it. And that's just one of the many features of this gimbal that I really like, is that you've got that versatility in the field to be able to do that using the equipment that you might already have on you. So all in all, I think these test shots really prove to me that this is a really nice product, not necessarily 100% perfect, but damn close to it, and you can compensate out problems in the field. Okay, so we've seen this out in the world, we've seen it in action on a bike, we've seen it walking, and there's going to be other environments that people are going to want to throw this into that I'm not capable of giving you a demonstration of. Ultimately, I think it doesn't matter what environment you're using it in, the horizon lock is the key, and for me, the horizon on this, when it's working 100% properly, is fantastic. It's definitely by far and away the best I've seen on a handheld so far. I would say it beats Featech quite significantly in that respect, because it really does stay solid. It's not perfect. We've seen that if you hold it parallel to the road whilst walking, for example, that it might start drifting. I'm sure that's just a firmware problem or even a calibration problem, but it wasn't perfect. So, I'm not going to give it 100%, this is the best thing, ignore Featech or anything like that. And also, this has a pricing point. This is $350 at the moment from Amazon, whereas you can get the G4 for $280. So it's significantly more expensive in that respect, but it has more features. It's more usable. I think if you're a person who has this as an extra thrown in your toolkit for for just doing some filming with GoPros and things like that, then what's really nice about this is that it's all encompassed. You can have your tripods and things like that, and you can connect them to the 1/4 inch thread on the bottom. But more importantly, these things are sensitive. IMUs, they are sensitive items, and when you throw it in a backpack and you launch it around, it comes to a point where it is going to get knocked around a little bit. What's great about this gimbal is that it does have a completely standalone calibration that you can perform. It's fiddly, it's a bit of a pain in the backside, there's a lot of steps to it, and really you need a set of instructions to be able to know which bit to do next, otherwise you're kind of never going to have any hope of doing it. But with mobile phones, download download the PDF, you know, you've got all the positions you need to put it into, and you can do that. So that's something that's not difficult to do, and it allows you to calibrate it. And it may simply be that a bit more calibration on mine is what was needed after I'd been doing the bike ride. But it's nice that you can do that. You don't have to have a PC to do it, which is good. The other thing that's well worth mentioning on this gimbal is the method that it turns on. I love the fact it's got a separate on-off switch on the side here. You don't have to push a button underneath it. The Featech G4 was a pain for that. Fine if you're using it as a handheld gimbal just in your hand, but if you use the quite expensive extension poles, as I mentioned before, you had to turn the thing on, you press the button, you've got to screw the pole in after it's turned on. At this point, of course, the gimbal's initialized, so you can't throw it around, the camera's got to be on it, and once you've finished your shot, you're then stuck in a position where you can't easily retract that pole. You know, you've got to unscrew it before you can even turn the gimbal off. So if you're in a, you know, a sporty environment or somewhere that you've really got to get that pole in, it's not ideal by any means. Whereas this, you just tap the side of it, then you'd be able to undo your tripod and everything like that. And obviously also you've got options on what you use, because it is a 1/4 inch thread, it's a standard tripod mount. You can put a monopole on there, you could put a selfie stick. You know, there's options out there that aren't tying you down to just those carbon fibre poles that Featech provide. So that's a nice little option. The other thing is the fact that you've got 2 much bigger batteries in here. You know, the fact that this lasts for about 6 hours, yet to be fully tested, I have to admit, but I've heard good things from people who have done the distance, and the fact that you can power your camera from it as well, and the fact that it's got bigger batteries to allow that is a good point. Again, the Featech G4 does allow you to do that. There's a separate little cable, they may be including it these days, but there is a cable that will allow you to charge a GoPro from it. It wasn't originally put in place to allow you to do that, so you actually had to kind of buy it separately, which was a bit of a shame. But this all comes in the box, and you've got an option. And not only that, let's not forget then the other little factor of this little hole here, which allows you to take a video feed out of it. So if you're a little bit inventive, or if you've got a little clip or a clamp or something like that, then you could easily put a little mini TV on this bracket and you'd be able to see the output of it. Obviously, if you've got this camera, if you've got this Hero 4 Silver and you've got this, you don't probably need to do that, but if you're running the black, then that's something that's going to be quite important to you. Likewise, you could attach an iPhone and you could use a Wi-Fi mode and then power off it, knowing that it's going to drain the battery less being in Wi-Fi mode. But it's just, you know, having that ability of getting a video output from it, it could be useful for some people. Not everyone's going to use it, but it could be useful for a lot of people. So the only other thing to mention really is the joystick, and the joystick is just, you know, it's lovely to use. You know, having the ability of doing a pan down, pan up, being able to activate the mode where you can control the gimbal fully, so you can actually do the roll, the pitch, everything like that. That is really very intuitive to use. You know, no one's going to have a problem with that. The only time I ever had a problem with it personally is when I was holding it like this, kind of not in the way you should, but I found that the balance wise, you know, balance is better with your fingers under here. Problem is, of course, if you start touching this by accident, all of a sudden you're holding it and you realise you've been taking a shot of the floor after a while. Very, very, you know, easy to adjust. You just need to get used to holding it down on the base, and there's no problem with that. Other than that, though, I have to admit, you know, it's not perfect because of that roll drift problem, and I do need to check out firmware, and I'm going to check out whether or not I've got the latest firmware. I believe I have. I have looked at the tools. The other thing that I think is well worth mentioning, and this for me, especially after dealing with Featech, is a crucial point for people who are watching this video. Zhiyun are clearly a well-established company, but they're not well established in the Western world. They don't have a lot of distributors as far as I can see. They're slowly getting there, but the other problem is when they've emailed me, they have the same problem that Featech have. A Chinese company, very little English spoken. What I do not know, and what worries me slightly about all of these Chinese products, great products, but if something goes wrong, you need support. You need to be able to send a formatted English email to the customer support team to say that my product that I've paid $350 for has gone wrong, or I'm having problems with it. You need to be able to get someone who can read that and either give you a straight answer or translate that to people in the technical department and then come back with an answer. And that is something that concerns me about all of these. Featech bless them, have tried that very well. They've tried to be good with customer support, but unfortunately they don't have the translation skills. They can't translate technical information back into Chinese to relay to their engineers, and that's where companies like DJI, that's why they are really excelling in the drone market, because they have that link with the Western world. These guys deserve to be in the shops more over here, and if you are a distributor, if you own a shop, I really encourage you to get these products in, because I think if you can get a good relationship with them, they'll build their supplies over in the West. You know, England especially, I don't think I've found one shop in England that will sell this in UK pounds, for example. So it'd be great to get these over there. It would be great to get that brand over, because I do think that they are good products. But again, when you're buying one of these things, I think it's well worth remembering that if you buy it directly from the company, you're going to be dealing directly from the company. Buy it on Amazon. If you can buy it on Amazon, you've got your seller protection from Amazon. You've got someone that you can go back to. They will deal with the seller. And I think that's something that you know, these are not perfect items. There will be problems with a few of them. You know, the reliability, things like that, then they're always going to be somewhat questionable. As far as I know, this product could never go wrong. It could be absolutely fantastic. It could have no problems whatsoever. But all I can tell you is that from my experience with Fairtech and other gimbals, I get a raft of people saying they've had problems out of the box. It's not working. It may be nothing to do with the product itself. It may be user error. But ultimately, you hear about these things, and you just want that comfort of knowing that there's a company out there that will be able to deal with your issues. So it's a question mark. You know, it's not a failing by any means. It's just a question mark that is worth considering before buying this, before shelling out $350. I think, however, when you get this out of the box, once you charge it up, once you start using it, you're going to absolutely love it. I really think it is a good product, and for me, while it may not be a very nice thing of me to say, given that I've done a lot of Fairtech work, I think this is going to be the one that's going to be used from now on when I'm out in the field. This just ticks more of the boxes for me from just doing production work. You know, as kind of a tool in the box. So anyway, hopefully that has been of use to people. As always, a little bit longer than I would like, but hopefully in depth enough that it's covered all the bases for it. If you've got any questions, obviously post a comment, and thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the Z1 Rider 2 and the Z1 Tiny 2 reviews as well. So there's the one for motorcycles, cars, things like that in the Rider, and there's also the flight gimbal, which is coming up, which I'm sure a lot of my subscribers are going to be eagerly waiting after the problems that I've had with the Fairtech Mini 3D. So please subscribe, look out for the next videos, and thank you for watching.